Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on today's Mom Squad. Now, this is a show that focuses on parenting, raising kids, all the stuff that goes along with it. But today, we are focusing on you, specifically all of you single parents. Love stinks. And since it's Valentine's Day, we have a couple of very special guests to talk about that extremely difficult time after a relationship ends and before a new one begins. In a minute, we are going to be hearing from Dr. Neeta Bhushan, a mental health expert and author of a new book called, get this, That Sucked, Now What? How about that for a title? But first, let me introduce you to my co-host, Lindsay Buckingham, also my very good friend. So I'm so glad that you are joining me today and opening up too, because you've been through some relationship roller coasters, and you've always really impressed me about how well you've held yourself going through it. Now that you are through it, now that you have found a very wonderful man. But when Valentine's Day comes up and you're in that space of things have not gone right, what does that feel like?
Well, it doesn't feel great,
Right?
you know? I love that title because you know what? You could apply it to really anything that you feel isn't going right in your life or you wish it had a different ending, right? But I think it doesn't feel that great because sometimes you have a tendency to make yourself feel like you're living on your own island. You can't really see past your own grief or pain. And so you're unaware that there are other people who have either been in your shoes or there's groups out there with women or men who could support you through it. Yeah. So I think for me, when I got divorced, I really didn't know what to do at first. I wasn't used to being on my own, so there's that aspect. Yeah. But also, you don't know where you're going to go from there, kind of. Yeah. You're looking at it like it's this big unknown abyss, and you don't know where you're going to land. Yeah. But I think the important thing is, and I know this sounds cliche, but it's so true. You just have to get up every day and keep going. You just have to keep going, especially when you're a mom, you really don't have a choice. Right. But I think the other thing that's really important is, and goes to everyone out there, if you find one thing that you like to do that just makes you feel good or it makes you feel like you're taking on a new challenge, that was really helpful too. Yeah. Kind of pushing me forward into gaining more confidence and giving me a chance to kind of rediscover myself, kind of thing.
Which is such great advice. And this is what we talk about throughout this entire episode. So we're going to talk more with Lindsay in a few minutes because I think that you can really learn from everything that Lindsay's been through and find hope too. Believe me, you can find hope. And we're going to talk a lot about that in a few minutes. But I want you to see my conversation with Neeta because she is someone who has been through really dark times as she recommitted to herself in a very big way.
I think so many times we're waiting for that, Prince Charming or that person to sweep us off our feet. And Valentine's Day can be a lonely one for singles. And I think that, we've got to focus on our friendships. And most of the time our girlfriends are the ones that know us the most. And so while we think Valentine's Day is that love day, well, why can't we share and reframe the suck of love, but reframe that so that we can celebrate with our girlfriends and most often than not, actually celebrate ourselves, date ourselves. That's the biggest time that I think we could focus on the love of ourselves as well.
Yeah. Galentine's Day, that's been huge for the past couple of years. But I'm sure there's a lot of Galentine celebrations that end up, somebody might be sitting there and yes, you're with your friends, but you're thinking, look at those people over there on a date, or you might end up talking about failed relationships and, focusing even internally on what's not happening. So how do you sit there in the moment and think about, wow, I'm really lucky. I have this group around me, or I have this best friend next to me.
So I want everyone to think of what I like to call in my newest book, That Sucked, Now What? How to Embrace the Joy and Chaos and Find Magic in the Mess. And I talk about this term called your soul support posse, your SSP. And your SSP is actually a group of friends, men, women, but your group of closest besties. And it could be, maybe one or two people, but they see the beauty in you that sometimes you don't get to see in yourself. And you can create a whole just container, 1 to 2 hours, if you're going to be going out to dinner or maybe go to a girlfriend's house. But you can set the parameters where we are going to only chat about what we enjoy and love in each other. And many times, we are looking outward for that support inward for ourselves. So for example, if we really want someone to be honest and vulnerable, well, we also have to be honest and vulnerable in a relationship. So are we actually doing that even with our girlfriends? Are we being honest, and are we also supporting, championing, advocating for our girlfriends in that scenario? And for those that I call these, pity parties that you're talking about, where we kind of go, Maureen, and we sulk as to why our dating lives suck so bad. So these are pity parties. These are kind of like, all right, I'm going to go and do retail shopping, or basically, all of these other vices. I'm going to get another glass of wine, all of these things that we do. But what if instead each of you just select one or two things that you really enjoy about that person? And we all want to know what our friends love about us. And so that begins the building blocks of, instead of having a pity party, we can have a really fun Galentine's Day gathering that is around your SSP, your soul support posse. And if you're thinking, well, I haven't really been close to any girlfriends, or maybe you're just not feeling it, and that's totally okay as well. Well, I'd say the same thing for yourself. And many times we don't think to date ourselves, but Valentine's Day is the perfect opportunity to draw yourself a bath, to, go for a long walk. And many times we think, oh, we need somebody else to do that. Well, what about you getting a fun romantic novel and sitting on the couch and just enjoying, maybe you having that glass of wine and really nourishing yourself with some of the things that maybe you would want somebody else to do. I think for so many, even of my clients and some of the ones that I talk about in this book, That Sucked Now What, and how after the sucky breakup moments, we do lean into these coping patterns and coping mechanisms, where we're eating ice cream on the couch, or we're sulking, or we're buying that other handbag that we probably shouldn't have purchased. And these are all great things, but what if we could also maybe make ourselves a nice 2-course, 3-course meal that's just for ourselves? Maybe write ourselves a little love note, celebrating what were the things that you accomplished in the year? What were the things that you actually were able to do? And perhaps maybe you can use Valentine's Day, and Maureen, I think we were talking about this, but for me, quite a few years ago, before I actually, and this was after, a big breakup, I got divorced, and I honestly thought I wasn't going to find love again. And I made every single excuse that you would possibly think of, and definitely had one or two of my own pity parties of sucky relationships. And guess what? I would attract sucky types of guys, because that was just my reality, until I decided that on Valentine's Day, quite a few years ago, I went to Bali. And now, mind you, nobody needs to go to Bali to do this, but I decided to marry myself. And it was very much like eat, pray, love. And it was on the southern tip of the island, facing kind of the Indian Ocean. And this marked the promise to myself that I would always put my needs in this container first. And I would always remember my truth. I would always remember my voice. I would always remember that if I wanted certain characteristics in a person, that I needed to be those characteristics. And it was just a ritual that I created with, with flowers, and I took sand from the beach. So basically the earth, there was a big, ocean right there, and we had the water, and I played music, but this was kind of my kind of a ritual for myself to remind myself that, you know what, this dating process, I'm honoring you, and I'm always going to honor you, Neeta, first. And lo and behold, 3 months later, I would meet the man who would literally be my co-pilot and co-partner in life. And that was 3 months after that date. Yeah. And it's interesting when you allow yourself to open to loving yourself, to celebrating yourself, to taking yourself on a date, to drawing your own bath, to making yourself an exquisite meal with all of the fun ingredients, drawing yourself a little candle, getting yourself flowers. These are all ways that we can celebrate our own unique light, our own unique wisdom, and not needing the external forces many times, because we can actually give it to ourselves. And also, it may just open up doors to your next love that's kind of right around the corner.
Yeah, I know everybody out there can probably relate where, and whether they've realized it or not. And I know I've realized this, back before I got married, was if I am not the best version of myself, if I am not 100% feeling like I am a complete person, that's when I would attract relationships that were kind of filling that void, but not really filling that void. I was looking for something to fill that void. And then when I felt like I was in the right place mentally, spiritually, just everything, that's when I would attract better relationships. And you mentioned that, you made that promise to yourself. How do you go about keeping that promise? Because when you are feeling a little empty in whatever area that you are feeling that void, it's hard to build that up. And it's easier to look for external influences in especially relationships. So how did you keep that promise to yourself, and how did you work on that daily?
Wow, yes. So every day, I mean, I would focus on journaling. Journaling was and has always been, especially through many sucky moments in my life. I remember at 16 years old, I was going through a huge suck. I had just lost my mom that year to breast cancer. And my father, who was so against me dating because he was very strict Indian man. And I just remember I would pour all of my thoughts and everything into, journaling. Of course, back then you have that little locket to, to hide whatever you didn't want your parents to read. But I remember having a journal for every single year. And it's interesting because I've written 4 books now, and a lot of those journal entries have really kind of been the hallmark to remembering and coming back to myself through, motherhood, through kind of the dark days of other losses that I've had. That in and of itself, that practice of journaling, and it doesn't have to be Dear Diary, but I think that I do have different prompts that I actually in the book take people through. And when you actually get the book, you also get a 44-page guidebook that helps you with figuring out and sourcing out a lot of the introspection that we don't necessarily have time for in our busy day to day. And if you've never been one to journal, or if you're watching this thinking, I don't think journaling is for me, well, I make it super easy where, okay, we're going to write down what were your 2 big wins today. And your big wins doesn't have to be, mind blowing. It could be, all right, somebody, somebody passed a really nice comment to me in the halls at the office, or I got a really, beautiful text from a friend that I haven't heard from. And that reminded me of our times together. So small nuggets in our day, and celebrating those small nuggets in our day, especially when we're going through a sucky season or a tough season where we are wanting love, and we know that love for us is out there. When we are starting to groom ourselves and reminding ourselves, and this daily practice could be a 5-minute journal entry where you're celebrating what happened and the good things that happened, or the 1 or 2 things that happened the day before. That is kind of your practice and your ritual that you're beginning for yourself. So that's one that I really love. Another practice that I really love is making an intention for that day. So, and this could be really easy. I have small children too. So many times I can't do yoga in the morning or meditation, and just all of those things go out the window because my toddlers are 19 months and 4. And so I totally get with the hustle and bustle of the day. But can you actually do something where it's a practice where I talk about this, and that's like, now what, where you can actually put your hand over your heart, and that mind-body connection, right? To remember, and let me just give you a little context around this. When we were young, when we had a bad day, we came home from school, all we wanted was the embrace of an adult. Yeah. All we wanted was the embrace of, a relative, right? To go into their arms, to get a hug from them. Well, now we can do that for ourselves, and really honoring ourselves with that mind-body connection of putting your hands, so simple, over your heart, and just thinking, how do I want to actually feel today? Especially if I'm feeling tired, or if I'm feeling, wow, everyone's got, a love partner and I'm still single. What's wrong with me? Because that's the big thing that we all think of. What's wrong with me? Well, nothing's wrong with you. You have everything that you need right now, and whatever is making its way towards you, it's all coming in due time.
So as you heard her talk about, I mean, there's a bunch of ways to really find yourself again. And that's through finding that group of friends that is supportive and that makes you feel like you. And you know what I'm talking about when you find your people, and you just are able to sit comfortably with them and in their presence. And sometimes it's hard to find that group once again, and then recommitting to yourself. And I've never been through divorce, but of course I've been through relationships. And I remember always coming out of those relationships thinking, I have to be my own best friend. I have to be the best version of myself to move forward. And taking that space after a relationship ends and really just focusing on how to become that whole person again was, I mean, I really feel like that set me up for finding my now husband. And I was in the middle of some breakups when I met him, and I'm going, I'm never going to date again. I'm never dating again. Sure, I'll go to lunch with this guy, but I'm not getting in a relationship. And there he was. So I feel like no matter what you've been through, you whether it was high school, college, afterwards, divorce, you've been through that, right?
I think that is excellent advice, because no matter what relationship ends, whether it's a divorce, whether it's a relationship that you were speaking of, you're hurting.
Yeah.
You have to heal. So I remember one of the first things I did was I went and got a therapist, because I said, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I have no idea how to move forward with this. Yeah. All I know is to keep waking up every day and just keep going. However, one of the biggest things that she said to me was, you have to heal yourself first before you can love anyone else. That was like the last thing I was thinking about that at that point, because I couldn't have even imagined being in another relationship. But what was extremely helpful and healing to me was learning to do all these things on my own. You know, we are very capable, strong beings. Yeah. We can get up and take the garbage out and cut our own lawn and do things that our partner did before. Yeah. We can do all of that on our own. and still find the time at night to sort of recenter yourself and say, you know what, good job today. You made it through another day. Good job.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to mention was when you're a single parent, and I think I said you kind of feel like you're on your own island.
Yeah.
If I could say anything, it's if you probably have these wonderful groups of friends and they can't relate to you because they're not divorced, right?
Yeah.
But they are not including you on these couple things because they're afraid that you're going to get your feelings hurt. But it's actually the other way around. Include your single friends to that couple's dinner if you can.
Yeah.
Because it's worse on the other side. It just reminds you that you're not a part of that. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So I try to be really cognizant of that. Now that I'm remarried and everything, I don't ever want my single friends to feel like they're not a part of that group.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No, I'm glad you said that
Yeah.
because I feel like a lot of times if you are, you have a couples group, you make plans, and you always kind of think of dinner reservations for 6. And so there's, well, us 3 will be talking, we know the guys will be, you almost want to match somebody up and like make sure that there's somebody there, but why should that change? That shouldn't change at all. A single parent should be able to come too,
I think it's more like people are protecting your feelings.
Yes.
They're thinking that it's going to be more hurtful for you to come and
Yeah.
sit with a bunch of couples. But in the end, I think that you just want to feel like just because that part of your life changed, like you're still a part of that group, But yeah, I would say, excuse me, just it gives you an opportunity really to take on new things. You live in one world when you're married. You run your life one way. Then all of a sudden you find yourself on your own. And it's kind of a good opportunity to rediscover how you want to live your life.
Yeah.
Things will be different, but you can learn more about yourself by walking on the path alone for a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Before we go, I do want to talk about hope too, because I think that, and going through relationships, but I think especially when it's a divorce situation, just having friends who have gone through it too, there's that initial instinct of, oh my goodness, who else is out there? And you jump on the dating apps and you're thinking, everybody I know is married, what's the dating pool like? And so then you hop into trying to find somebody just because that's a concern. Did you go through that?
100%.
Yeah.
I want to say this to anyone out there that is that's going through a divorce, or you are kind of in this rut of relationships where you just feel like you're never going to find your person. You will.
Yeah.
It feels so uncertain. And I could have never imagined finding my husband, who is literally the most wonderful guy, and I'm so blessed to have him. But here's the thing, focus on yourself. Be your own best friend. Be your own best friend. Love yourself first. Don't even, if you can, take dating off the table for a while, and that's when it happens.
Yeah.
When you are your best version of yourself, that's when your heart is open enough to let love in again and to trust again. But don't lose hope. No matter what stage you're in, don't lose hope. It will happen, but love yourself first.
Yeah, I love your advice. And the reason I wanted to bring Lindsay in is because I just I've seen you through the phases. And when Dave came into your life, I mean, what a wonderful guy. And I was just like, oh my gosh, Lindsay,
He still makes me smile.
This was fate. I mean, all of the hard times you went through, it was fate to have the both of you meet up and restart a life together. And he's wonderful. And so I knew you would bring hope to anybody out there that's maybe it's just the thought of, oh my gosh, things are falling apart in my marriage. I can't go through a divorce. This is going to be too tough. Maybe you've just gone through it. And everybody thinks of these things around Valentine's Day just because it's such a focus.
Oh yeah, you know what? Go out with your girlfriends or your
Galentine's
guy
Day.
friends. Do a Galentine's Day or a Valentine's Day.
Right.
Go be with your friends. Still celebrate it.
Yeah.
You can still celebrate Valentine's Day.
Oh, yeah.
You don't need a partner to do that. You just need people who love you. So whether that's your friends or people in your family, go celebrate it anyway.
Yeah. I love it. All right, Lindsay, thank you so much for
You're
joining
welcome,
us.
girl.
And thanks to all of you. We always appreciate when you join us here on Mom Squad. We have so many great topics coming up over the next few weeks, especially when it comes to technology and your kids. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you right back here next time on Mom Squad.